Hey everyone, welcome back to our middle grade book club. As you know, we are working our way through the Scorpio races by Maggie Steifvater with permission from Scholastic. I'm Emily from the Bowen Branch Library. I'm your host. We're going to be working on chapter 28 through 31 today. Please make sure that you take a look at the description box underneath the video for your discussion questions for this section. Hope you're enjoying our read-along. Chapter 28, Puck. So tonight is the night of the Great Scorpio Festival. I've only been to the Scorpio Festival once. Mum took us one year while Dad was out on the boat. Dad didn't approve of the festival or the races in general. He said that one bred hooligans and the other gave those hooligans 2 more legs than they could steer. We'd always thought Mum didn't approve either. But still, that year, when it became clear that Dad wasn't going to be back that evening, Mum told us to fetch our hats and coats and told Gabe to kick the Morris into life. It was dodgy even back then. With illicit fervour, we piled in. Gabe took the coveted passenger seat while Finn and I fought and slapped each other in the back seat. Mum shouted at us and tore along the little road to Scarmouth, bent over the steering wheel like it was a troublesome horse. And then, Scarmouth. Everywhere there were costumes and the Scorpio drummers and the wail of the singers. Mum bought us bells and ribbons and November cakes, which made my hands sticky for days. Everywhere, noise, 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 until Finn, who was just a little urchin then, had started to cry from it. Dory Maud whirled over from nowhere with one of the terrifying curse masks and put it on Finn. Hidden behind the flat-toothed monster mask, he became as fierce as my mother. Over the years that I knew Mum, I more often saw her mucking Dove's lean-to, or cleaning pots or painting pottery, or leaning up against the roof to smack a shingle back on with a hammer. But for some reason, now, when I call up thoughts of Mum, I remember that night at the festival, her dancing wildly in a circle with us, a mouth full of glinting teeth, face straight in the firelight, singing the November songs. And now it's years later, and it's the day of the festival, and we can go if we want to, because there's no one alive to tell us otherwise. It's a strange and hollow feeling. I got the Morris running, Finn says now, coming into the house. He regards my dishwashing with more interest than dishwashing warrants. It took a while, I tell him. What are you doing? Instead of heading to the bathroom to clean up, he's fetching his coat, which has fallen onto the floor behind Dad's sitting chair by the fire. Finn rubs his forehead, leaving a black smear. I'm afraid to turn the Morris off, or it might not start again. You can't let it run all night. My brother puts on his lumpy hat. Can't believe Mum called you the clever one. She didn't. She called Gabe that, I say. As he puts his hand on the door, I realize where he thinks he's going. Wait, you think you're going to the festival? Finn just shrugs and gives me a look. Gabe's not even here. Why do you think we're going? I have to be up early. Because you have to go finalise your registration, Finn says. That's what your rule sheet says. Of course, he's right. I feel foolish for not remembering it, and then I feel my stomach drop to my feet. Before, I had a few yards of seawater between me and everyone who might say something about me being in the races. Now the only thing between me and everyone else will be a few pints of beer. But there's no way around it, and maybe, just maybe, Gabe will be there. The rest of the island will be. Unreluctantly, I abandon the dishwashing, and reluctantly I find my ratty green coat and get my hat as Finn flings open the door. Now that I know to look for it, I can see that he's crawling out of his skin with excitement. Finn never looks more excited. He just gets faster. Finns are generally slow-moving creatures. The Morris looks ominous under the darkening pink sky, the widening black hands of clouds stretching across the sunset, but Finn's face is a shining beacon in the driver's seat as he waits for me. I think of him behind Dory Maud's fearsome curse mask, and imagine him that happy again, his fingers sticky for days. Wait, I say, and I run back inside to pull a few slender coins from the increasingly shallow collection in the biscuit tin on the counter. I will find a way to earn it back, even if we eat nothing but November cakes for this week. I run back out into the car and sit. Finn's repair of the seat digs into my thigh. Is this thing going to stop on us? I don't want to be stuck in the middle of some field after dark with a horse looking in. Just don't turn on the heater, Finn says. I don't want to know how he got it started. Last time it required 2 men pushing it at a run while Finn steered. As we bump along the roads, he adds, I'll bet that's where Gabe is. I'll bet he's at the festival. And at that, I get an even more severe prickle of nerves, because the idea of confronting Gabe over Malvern's eviction threat is one that has been dogging me. If he's at the festival, he won't be able to avoid me. Ho! At first I think it's Finn who said it, even though it's not his voice, and I don't think Finn has ever said ho in his life. Then I see that it's the Carroll brothers. They're both stumping along like black guillemots in the twilight, and Jonathan's shouted to get our attention. Finn lets the Morris sway to a halt. I slide the window open. Give us a ride into town? Jonathan asks. In response, Finn drags up the parking brake. I'm shocked somewhat by his boldness. I would have let the Carrolls ride with us, of course, but in my head Finn is more shy than that. He keeps getting older while I'm not paying attention. I have to get out to let the two boys in. Jonathan climbs in first and kicks the back of Finn's seat, and Finn looks affably in the rearview mirror. Brian says thanks to me. Whether for the ride or for getting out to let him in, I don't know. The car feels full of people, like we've increased our number by 5 instead of 2. As we pull off again, Jonathan leans forward and clutches the shoulders of the driver's seat to ask, "When's the bonfire go up, do you know?" "I don't know," Finn replied. I twitch as a hand grips the back of my seat. A fishy smell accompanies it. I hear, "Evening, Kate." I glance back at the hand. It's a nice square hand, even if it smells like fish. "Evening?" Jonathan shakes Finn's seat. "I think I'm legit to bet this year. Do you know if it's 16 or 17, the age to bet?" "I don't know," Finn replies. "Well," said Jonathan cheerfully, "you're useless as tits on a boar. Saw you setting up Dory Maud's booth yesterday morning, Puck. What's she selling this days? Stuff?" I don't know why he asked the question if he was just going to answer it for himself anyway. Brian leans towards the window and his voice gets a little closer. It's nice and square like his hand, one of those old island accents that sounds good talking about the weather or how many gannets there were on the rock the other day. When I was younger, I used to stand in the bath where it was echoey and try to mimic it. It's something about the R's that's quite different from how my parents spoke. "I hear you're going to ride. Is that true?" Finn flicks on the headlights as Jonathan keeps chattering at him. Night coming fast under the thin gauze of clouds. Something smells of burning. I hope it's not the Morris. I say, "It's true." He doesn't say anything, just makes this sort of low, tuneless whistle to indicate surprise or awe, and then leans back in his seat. Meanwhile, Jonathan Carroll keeps up a running commentary with himself. He only needs to see Finn's head incline slightly to encourage him to start up again. I'm not sure Finn's even nodding his head. I think it's just the pits in the road. As we come along the high part of the road, though, even Jonathan falls silent. From here you can see the ocean for just a few moments. It's grey and vast under an equally vast sky, and even from this distance I can see how the waves tear each other apart. We get plenty of rain and storms often enough, but our weather is not given to extremes. Still, something about the white churning against the rocks is not comforting. "Oh," Jonathan says again, look there, ahead!" And despite ourselves, we all look. The water shifts, black, then grey-blue, then black again, the froth a white-ruffled colour, and then out of the froth we all see it. A dark horse's head surges above the water, jaws wide open, and then, before the sea swallows the first, we see a chestnut mane break the surface, along with a brief glimpse of a brown spine curving in the water alongside it. Then they're all gone beneath the water, and I have goosebumps creeping up my arms. "Good night to be on land," Brian Carroll says, not lightly like his brother would have said it. I think of the smell of fish he brought with him, and think of the plain way that he asked me if I was riding. Riding in the races might not seem so impossibly brave to someone who fishes the November sea for a living. If I were catching one, I'd catch the chestnut," Jonathan says. "The red ones always win." Brian says, "You mean Sean Kendrick always wins?" Jonathan shuffles in his seat. "Reckon chestnuts look faster." "I reckon," Brian says, "Sean Kendrick makes them look that way. Have you met him, Kate?" Finn looks amused at the Kate, probably because when Brian says it sounds like I'm more responsible than I really am. "Yes," I mutter. "I've seen him twice since we raced, but nothing about him suggested that he wanted to speak to me. In fact, sort of the opposite. He's not the kind to say ho, either." "Queer sort," Jonathan says. "Only a water horse knows the kabalushka better than him." Brian Carroll's voice is admiring. "You could make worse friends than him, Kate, right now, though I expect you know that already. All I know is that Sean Kendrick rode that bay mare and waited until he was nearly over the cliff edge before saving himself, and that the dead speak more than he does. I'd bet on you," Jonathan says generously, "if I wasn't betting on him." "Jonathan," this is Brian, warningly, as if I care who his dim brother is betting on. "Or Ian Privet," Jonathan concedes. "He's got that wicked fast grey from last year." He slaps a Scorpio drumbeat on the back of Finn's seat and then leans forward to speak to me. "Betting's crazy on you down at the pub, on whether you'll show up tonight for the parade. Jerry Old says that you haven't been on the beach for days and you've given up. What's-his-face says that you're dead, but obviously that's not true. So what do you think, Kate? Are you a good bet?" Brian sighs noisily. I say, "If it was my horse against your mouth, not a chance." Finn and Brian laugh. Jonathan tells me I'm made of piss. I think it's a compliment. I look out the window. The sky is turning black quickly under the stripes of clouds. There's a red glow in the distance where Skarmouth crouches, but the rest of the island is black and mysterious. In the dark, there's no difference between the sea and land. I remember riding Dove on the cliff top this morning. The way the air bit my cheeks and the smell of the sea set my heart pounding. I know I should be terrified of tonight and of tomorrow and of the next day, and I am, but I can feel something else too. Excitement. Chapter 29. Puck. The Riders' Parade will be at 11, Brian Carroll says. I suppose you know that already. I didn't, but now I do. 11 seems like a long way away, hours filled with the noise of the festival. I need to find my brother, I tell Brian. My older brother. In reality, what I need to find is my footing. I'm standing in this festival of mums, but I don't have Mum. Finn and Jonathan Carroll have vanished off into the crowds, leaving me with Brian, whose lungs I know better than the rest of him, and a pit of snaky nerves in my stomach. I thought my statement was a goodbye, but Brian says, "All right, where do you think he'll be?" If I knew the answer to that, I would have spoken to him 3 days ago. The truth is, I don't know anything about my older brother these days. Brian cranes his neck to look over the crowd, scanning faces for Gabe. We're standing at the head of the main street of Scarmouth, and I can see clear down to the pier. There's people filling every inch. The only bare bit is where the Scorpio drummers make their way through, far down near the water. Something smells delicious, and my stomach growls. I say, "Someplace I won't think to look, probably. Do you have any brothers?" "Sisters," Brian says. 3 of them. "Where are they tonight?" "The mainland." He says it without force, and I wonder if it stopped stinging, or if it never stung at all. "Okay, if they were here tonight, where would they be?" "Well," Brian says, thoughtful and slow, hard to hear above the shouted conversation around us. "The quay, or the pub. Shall we look?" Suddenly I feel strange having this conversation with Brian Carroll. He's standing close enough to be heard, looking at me, and he seems enormous and square and grown up with his curls and his fisherman's muscles, and the steady way he looks at me is not like I'm used to. Part of me thinks he's just humouring me. Me, a kid, him most of the way to a man. But then part of me sees my hands in front of me. They're Mum's hands, not a little girl's hands, and I know I'm wearing Mum's face too. I wonder how long it will take me to feel as adult inside as I look outside. "Okay," I agree. We strike off down the street. Brian's broad shoulders plough a way through the people. Tourists, a lot of them, wearing unfamiliar faces. There is something subtly different about them, like they're a different species. Their noses are a little straighter, their eyes a little closer together, their mouths narrower. They're related to us like Dove is related to the water horses. There's no sign of Gabe. But how would we find him among all these people anyway? Brian keeps pressing on, though, downward in the direction of the pier. There's noise, 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 drums and shouts, laughing and singing, motorbikes and fiddles. We push our way down to the quay, which is a little quieter, flanked by ocean on one side instead of people. The water moves restlessly against the wall, closer than usual, reaching up toward us. It's quiet enough that I hear commotion from the cliffs above the town. "What's going on up there?" I ask. "The bonfire?" Brian squints up as if he can see anything but the buildings glued to the side of the incline. "That and the sea wishes?" The only thing I know of the sea wishes is that Father Mooneyham told us not to do them. I'd been unable to get more information out of Mum. "Have you made a sea wish before?" Brian looks stricken. "No, indeed." "What are they?" "It's a bit of paper you write on with charcoal from the bonfire. You write something on it and toss it over the cliffs." "That doesn't sound bad." "A curse, Kate. They're curses. You write them backward and throw them to the sea." I'm thrilled and horrified. Immediately I try to imagine if there is any curse that I can see myself throwing over the cliff. I pose a striking figure in my head, silhouetted by the bonfire, hurling something foul into the ocean. "You're wild, Kate Connolly," Brian says. "I can see it in your face." I'm not sure about that, but when I look at him, he's studying me intently. Suddenly and terrifyingly, I get the idea that he's going to kiss me, and I shy backward several feet before I realize that he hasn't moved an inch. He laughs at me. A kind, safe laugh. Maybe I am wild, after all. "Come on," Brian said. "Let's see if he's here." We continue down the quay. Here there are food vendors beneath canvas, and this is clearly where Brian thought that Gabe might be. The vendors are doing a brisk trade, and we have to thread through the lines. Brian is craning his neck again to look for my brother, and again I feel strange, performing this personal quest with someone outside my family. What business of it is his, spending his festival finding Gabe instead of having a good time? "You shouldn't be spending the evening doing this," I say. "You should be having fun. I'll keep looking." Brian looks down at me. I think he's been getting taller throughout the evening. By the time we find Gabe, he'll be as tall as St. Columba's on the hill, and I'll have to have a stepladder to hold a conversation with him. "I am having fun. Do you want me to go?" I don't believe him. I've seen fun, and it involves hooting and tearing in circles and possibly getting a skinned knee. This is interesting, not fun. I just feel guilty for keeping you. Brian swallows and looks off over the crowd as if he's still searching for Gabriel. "The last of my sisters went to the mainland last year. Normally I would have been here with her." "Gabe says he's going." It's out before I even think of it, and immediately I can't imagine why I said it. Why did I mention this to Brian Carroll when I haven't even really discussed it with Finn? The most detailed conversation I've had with Brian Carroll in my life involved spitting on his yet-to-be-dug grave, and now I'm turning my pockets inside out on family secrets. So he says. Brian replies. I want to shout, he didn't tell us until he had to, but that really would be a family secret. So I just seal my mouth shut. I wish I hadn't come. I wish I were at home. I wish Brian Carroll weren't looking at me from his ever-increasing height. I cross my arms and stuff them into my armpits. When I find Gabe, I'm going to punch him right in his eye. Brian Carroll seems oblivious to my distress. He adds, I think he said he was going over with Tommy Falcon Beach Grattan. I let a small noise of rage escape from me. Of course, everyone knows. Everyone's going. Are you going to the mainland too? No, Brian says seriously. My great-great-grandfather helped build this pier, and I'm not leaving it. He sounds like he's married to it, and that suddenly makes me feel tired and cross. Hey now, Brian says, as if he has now finally discovered my annoyance. Let's go looking at the pub. That's where I was headed. He might be there. That's where the locals hide sometimes. If nothing else, we can get out of the cold for a moment. We make our way back through the people to the Black-Eyed Girl, a green-fronted building with the doors propped open. It always struck me as too distinguished to be a pub, all polished wood and dimpled leather and brass fittings. It's impeccably clean, and for most of the day incredibly empty. Then, at night, when the sailors get tired of being sober, the pub fills up and becomes the sort of noisy that spills out into the street and vomits into the quay. I've never been inside that second version of the pub until tonight. It's a completely different kind of full from the street. A dense, smoky, too-hot claustrophobia full of shouting and laughter and disconcertingly my name in conversations. Hey now, is that our Kate Connolly? Says a man standing by the door. The mention of my name turns a few other heads our way. It feels like they all have more than one set of eyes each. Kate Connolly! Shouts another man gladly by the bar. He pushes off a bar stool to come closer. Barrel-chested and ginger-haired, he smells like garlic and beer. The hen among the cocks? Brian takes my arm, not gently, and gestures with his other hand to the back of the pub. Then he turns to the man and says, It sure is. So now, John, what do you think of this tide coming in? Due for a storm? I know a rescue effort when I see one, so I push farther into the pub away from them. I search the back of the pub, and there, in the corner booth, is Gabe. He's leaned forward, a pint in front of him, long fingers spread like a spider on the table as he makes some point. When he laughs, even without hearing him, his expression looks looser and coarser than I remember. Anger snakes through me. Brian's still covering for me, so I surge through the smoke and stand beside Gabe's chair at his shoulder. I wait for him to notice me. Tommy Falk, damnable co-conspirator, across the table has already seen me and smiled prettily, but Gabe keeps gesturing. Gabe, I say. I feel annoyingly like a child standing at the arm of Dad's chair, interrupting him from reading the paper. He turns. I can't tell if his expression is guilty. Now that I look, I don't think it is at all. He just says this. Oh, Puck. Yes, oh, Puck. I can't believe you're riding in the races. Tommy breaks in. He has 2 empty glasses in front of him, and so all of the words become one effortless word. No real pauses, just S sounds between them. Saw you on that first day. First girl ever, here's to us. Don't encourage her, Gabe says, but he's jovial. His breath smells like alcohol. You're drunk, I say. Gabe glances at Tommy, then back to me. Don't be stupid, Kate. It's one drink. Dad didn't want you to drink. You told him you wouldn't. You're being hysterical. But I don't feel hysterical. I need to talk to you. Okay. Gabe doesn't move. The way he's sitting, I can tell that he's very aware of Tommy watching, and he's working the conversation to make himself look clever. I lean over to say, privately. The thing that is hurting me the most is the look on his face, one eyebrow raised as if he still thinks that I am overreacting. He lifts one palm towards the ceiling. There isn't really a place to be private here, can't it hold? I put my hand on his arm and grip his shirt. No, not anymore. I need to talk now. I guess I'm going, Tommy. I'll be back. You show him, Puck, Tommy says with a fist punch into the air. Right at that moment I despise Tommy and every bit of prettiness about him. I don't even look at him. Instead, I lead Gabe towards the door at the very back of the pub. It's a tiny toilet that smells a little like recent vomit. I shove the door shut behind him. I wish I had a moment to collect my thoughts, to remember exactly how I wanted to confront him, but I seem to have shut everything I wanted to say out of the room. This is cozy, Gabe says. A mirror the size of a book is hung above the sink, and I'm glad I can't see myself in it. Where have you been? Gabe eyes me as if the question is a ridiculous one. Working? Working. All the time. All night. Gabriel shifts his weight, stares at the ceiling. Haven't been gone all night? Is that what this is about? It wasn't all it was about, but I can't remember what exactly it was that I was going to shout at him. My thoughts are scattered and gritty under my feet. I can only remember clearly my desire to hit him in the eye, and then all of a sudden the most important thing comes back to me. Benjamin Malvern came to the house this week. He said he's going to take the house. Why didn't you tell us? I ask. I hate that I am still clutching his arm, but how do I know that he won't leave without my fingers on him? How could I? Gabe replies. He's dismissive. Finn would go crazy and fret himself to death, and you would become hysterical. I would not, I snap. I'm not sure if I'm hysterical right now. Everything I've said seems logical to me, but my voice feels a little out of control. Clearly. We deserve to be told, Gabriel. What good would it do? You two aren't going to make any more money. What do you think I've been doing all these nights? I'm doing my best. And then you're leaving. My brother looks at me, and his smile has vanished. What replaces it isn't unhappiness, just no expression at all, eyes narrowed against a wind I don't feel. I can't appeal to the feelings of this Gabe because I can't tell if he has any. A person can only try so hard. I did my best. That's not good enough, I say. He removes his sleeve from my fingers and opens the door. The sound and smell of the pub swell into the airless room. That's too bad. That's all I've got. Gabe shuts the door behind himself. I swallow my sadness as hard as I can. It only makes it halfway down my throat. It's all up to me. That's what it comes down to. I spend a long few minutes in the bathroom after he's gone, my forehead resting against the doorframe. I can't go out right away because then Tommy Falk will grin at me and make some stupid joke and I'll burst into tears in public, and I'm just not going to do that. I know that Brian Carroll is probably still waiting at the front of the pub for me, and I'm sorry about that, but not sorry enough to come out. After a bit, I take a deep breath. I guess I thought before that somehow I could convince Gabe to stay, that somehow through all this he would change his mind, but it feels undeniable now. It feels like he's already stepped onto the boat. I slip out of the bathroom and find there's a back door a few feet away from it. Two great decisions battle inside me for a moment. Go up front past Gabe and Tommy Falk and the staring men to where Brian Carroll maybe still waits, or slide out the back door into the alley to lick my wounds and bide my time until the riders' parade. Really, I just want to go home and crawl into my bed and put my pillow over my head until December or March. I could eat my shame for dinner, it's so thick, but I take the back door and leave Brian Carroll behind. The wind tears down the narrow stone-walled alley behind the pub, and as I head back to the street, I think crossly of hot chocolate and home that doesn't feel like home anymore. I can see that there's an even denser sea of people on the street now, and I'm feeling not at all motivated to swim in it at the moment. Then I hear, "Puck!" and it's Finn's voice. He grabs my elbow, unsteady, and for a brief, uncertain moment, I think Finn is drunk, because I can believe anything of my brothers now, but then I see that he was just shoved from behind by the seething crowd. Finn finds my left hand, opens my fingers, and puts a November cake in my palm. It oozes honey and butter, rivulets of the creamy frosting joining the honey in the pit of my hand. It begs to be licked. Someone nearby screams like a water horse. My heart goes like a rabbit's. I let the cake drip and meet Finn's eyes. He's a stranger, a black demon with a ghastly white grin. It takes me a moment to properly recognize him beneath the charcoal and chalk striped across his cheeks. Only his lips are pink, where the frosting from his own November cake has rubbed him clean. He wears one of the false spears made of driftwood on his back, secured with a leather thong. "How did you get that?" I have to shout to be heard over the mob. Finn grabs my other hand and stuffs something into it. When I go to open my fist to see what it is, he pushes my arm closer to my body, shielding it from general view. My eyes blink at the wad of money in my palm. Finn leans toward me. His breath is sweet as nectar. He's had more than one cake. "I sold the Morris?" I hurriedly shove the money out of sight. "Who gave you that much for it?" "A silly tourist woman who thought it was cute." He smiles at me, teeth crooked and bright in his coal-black face, his hair crazy, and I feel my face soften into a grin. "Thought you were cute, probably." Finn's smile disappears. One of the lines in Finn's code is that you're not to say anything about Finn being attractive to the opposite sex. I'm not sure which exact statute governs this, but it's closely related to the one that won't let you thank him. Something about compliments and Finn don't work. "Never mind," I say. "Good job." "Only thing," Finn says, licking his hand, "is I'm not sure how we're getting home now." "If I make it through the riders' parade," I reply, "I'll fly us home." Chapter 30. Sean. The Scorpio drums pound a ragged heartbeat as I wind my way through the crowds that fill the streets of Skarmouth. The cold air smarts as I breathe it in. The wind carries all sorts of foreign scents. Food that's only made during the race season. Perfume only women from the mainland wear. Hot pitch, burning rubbish, beer spilling on the stones. This Skarmouth is raw and hungry, striving and unknowable. Everything the races make me feel on the inside is bleeding up through the seams in the street tonight. In front of me, people shoulder their way through the tourists who are slow with drink and loud with excitement. If you hold yourself a certain way, though, Even the drunk will part for you. I slide through the crowd towards the butchers, my eyes wide open. I'm watching for Mutt Malvern. It's better to see than be seen until I know what he is up to tonight. Sean Kendrick. I hear my name, whispered, then called, but I keep walking. There are many who will recognize my face tonight. As I walk, I look past the people at the town that stands beneath them. The stones are gold and red in the streetlights, the shadows black and brown and deep death blue, all the colors of the November ocean. Bicycles line up against the walls as if a wave has washed them here and there and then retreated. Girls pushed by me, their strides ringing from the bells tied around their ankles. Firelight flickers from one of the side streets, flames licking from a barrel, boys gathered around it. I look at Scarmouth, and it looks back at me, its eyes wild. On one of the walls there's an advertisement for the Malvern Yard. Four-time winner of the Scorpio races, it says, own a piece of the races, young stock auction on Thursday at 7 a.m. Everything in that advertisement is my business, but my name is nowhere on it. I have to stop for the drummers as they crash up from a side street that leads to the water. They're 14 strong, driven by enthusiasm rather than talent. They all wear black. The Scorpio drums are wide as the span of my arms, the heads made of blood-spattered leather and rope. The drums throb, replacing my pulse with theirs. Behind the drummers is a woman who wears a horse's head in a blood-red tunic. A tail curls behind her, and it's hard to tell if it's rope or hide or a real tail. Her feet are bare by tradition. It is impossible to tell who she is. The drums thump by, and we press against the walls to allow them to pass. Some of the tourists clap. The locals stomp. The Mare Goddess scans the crowd slowly, the stuffed horse head dwarfing her body. I see someone make the sign of a cross over the front of them, and then again, backward this time. In the center of the street, the horse-headed woman holds out her hand, and 1,000 tiny pebbles rain out across the street. By tradition, she'll drop a single shell in the course of the night, and whoever gets the Mare Goddess's shell will have a wish. There is nothing but sand in her hand this time. One night, many years ago, as I stood beside my father, she looked at me and dropped her handful of sand and pebbles, and the single shell spun across the ground in front of me. I had darted away from my father's side to catch the shell where it stopped. I had my wish formed before my fingers curled around it. I turned my face to the side, waiting for the woman to pass, waiting for the memory to pass. I hear an exhalation, at once human and equine, and I turn my head. The Mare Goddess stands directly in front of me, inches away. The great old grey head is turned so that the left eye regards me, like Corr would have with his one poor eye. Only this horse's eye has been replaced with a shiny bit of slate, polished so that it winks and weeps like the piebald's. This close, I can see the streaks of darker red in the woman's tunic where the fabric wrinkled and caught more blood in the folds. The costume is fearfully made. Even close, it's hard to tell how the woman ends and the false head begins, and it's impossible to determine how she can see. I imagine I feel hot breath on my face, huffing from the nostrils. My heart speeds. I'm once again a boy, and I'm watching her hand open, releasing pebbles and sand. The island, the beach, life stretches before me. The Mare Goddess seizes my chin with her hand. The shale eyes stare at me. The hair around it is matted with age, too long since death. Sean Kendrick, she says, and the voice is throaty, barely human. I hear the sea in it. Did you get your wish? I cannot look away. Yes. Many times over. The shale glints and blinks. The voice again takes me by surprise. Has it brought you happiness? The question is not one that I would normally consider. I'm not unhappy. Happiness isn't something this island yields easily. The ground is too rocky and the sun too sparse for it to flourish. Well enough. Her fingers are tight on my jaw. I smell blood, and I see now that fresh blood soaked into the shirt has dripped onto her hands. The ocean knows your name, Sean Kendrick, she says. Make another wish. She reaches up and smears the back of her hand across both of my cheekbones. Then the Mare Goddess turns away to follow the drummers, just a woman in a dead horse's head. But there is something hollow inside me, and for the first time winning doesn't feel like enough. I can't get the Mare Goddess out of my head, the timbre of her voice, the imagined feel of her breath on my skin. My throat burns as if I've swallowed seawater. I swim now through the crowd, from my encounter with the Mare Goddess and back into the real world. I pin myself to the ground with the memory of my ordinary errand at Grattan's. I need to settle up the account, and I need to place another order for the water horses. But my mind keeps turning over the woman in the horse head, trying to decide whose hands they could have been. If I can place her, I can fill the void inside me. It becomes only a parlour game again, then, if I know whose voice it was, made gritty inside the dead skull. I think it may have been Peg Grattan, no stranger to blood on her hands, and no taller than me, even with the horse head on. I push into the butcher's. As always, it's the cleanest place in Skarmouth, and it's lit to a bright daylight white inside. 2 birds have somehow gotten into the building, and as I press my way in, the lights seem to flicker and dim as their wings flash in front of the bulbs. I don't see Peg Grattan behind the counter, so it could have been her in the horse costume. I feel lighter, less called. I stand at the counter and Beach Grattan sullenly takes my order. It's not me he resents, but the job, keeping him in when he wants out to the festival. Your face is a ruin. Beach grunts with admiration, and I remember the woman smearing my face with blood. You look like the devil. I don't reply. I'll be out of here in 20 minutes, he tells me, though I didn't ask. 30, calls Peg Grattan from the back. I taste blood in my mouth. An eye made of shale blinks at me. Beach jots down my order, and as he does, I look up at the board behind the counter. There's my name, and Corr's, and beside us are our current odds, 1 to 5. Below us are also the names of a score of new entrants from the mainland who have found mounts in the first few days of training. They'll crowd the beach, bad as the first day of training, inept and overbrave. I scan down the list to find Kate Connolly. I see her pony's name first, and then her name. Her odds are 45 to 1. I wonder how much of that is because of her pony, and how much is because of her gender. I let my eyes trail down the list to find Mutt's name on the list. There it is, and his horse is beside it. By all rights, the name written beside his should have been Idana. The horse that he has not touched for 2 days, the bay with white markings. The horse that I told his father to put him on. But it doesn't say Idana. The word printed beside Mutt's is Skata, a good name for a horse, hard and short. Skata is a local name for the magpie, a bird known for its cleverness, for its affection for shiny things, for its black and white coloration. There's only one thing on that beach that's black and white. Skata is the piebald mare. Chapter 31. Sean. I find him by one of the bonfires. The flames strive high into the black sky, tangled with the night. I can taste the smoke on my tongue. Matthew Malvern, I say, and it comes out a snarl, a call to battle, no more friendly than one of Corr's screams across the sand. Mutt is a giant mythical creature outlined in black before the bonfire, charcoal in one hand and a scrap of paper in the other, a sea wish. If he has a face, I cannot see it. I shout, Is it a death wish you have written on that? Mutt twists the paper just long enough for me to see my name on it, written backward. Then he lets it fly over the edge of the cliff. It disappears into the black. That horse will kill you. Mutt swaggers up to me. His breath is dark, the underside of the sea. And when, Sean Kendrick, have you ever cared for my safety? He stands closer and closer until our shadow is the same. I don't flinch. If he means to fight tonight, I mean to fight him back. The storm's inside me already, and I can see Fundamental go under again, fresh as the minute it happened. It might not be you she kills, I say, and no one deserves to die because of you. The fire is hot on my skin. I know why you don't want me on her, Mutt laughs. You know she's faster than him. For so many years I have taken every precaution to keep Mutt alive for his father, put him on the safest horse I can manage, trained the hell out of that horse to make it impervious to the ocean, watched him in training to make sure that no one else interfered with him. I have 2 healed ribs that should be his. Now he's put himself so far outside my ability to protect him that it's almost relieving. On the piebald, I can do nothing for him. I put my hands up. Do what you want. I'm done. I see figures at the corner of my eye. They're here to bring us over for the riders' parade. The night's nearly over, and then the training really begins. It's hard to imagine right now, a day after this night, which seems like it could go on forever. Yes, Mutt says. You are. Thank you so much for joining us for chapter 37 through 31. Make sure that you check the description box underneath the video for your discussion questions for this section. Please feel free to discuss them with your family or answer any of our questions in the comments box, and feel free to ask your own as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.